Since 1920s, the genre of science fiction was invented. Nowadays, it's well known that genre it has some incredible things, not just in novels but also in movies, cinema, or even on plays. But there are certain subgenres that are important to people to discuss. The first one, for example, is dystopia. The dystopia is basically a perfect world with a dark secret behind it. For example, the movie Before Vendetta from the year 2006 has some of the major things of the genre of dystopia. For example, the people in United Kingdom live under the regimen of a totalitarian government, but they don't know only but they oh well they know but they don't want to destroy their own world. Or for example, Matrix. It's a perfect world for the protagonist Neo, but in reality, it's only a simulation. So he has to wake up from that simulation. Then we have steampunk, which was invented during 1940s and 1950s. This subgenre is characterized because everything has to do with steampunk. It's a Victorian style. For example, the movie 20,000 Leagues of Submarine Journey by Jules Verne, the movie by Disney, has one of the best examples because the whole submarine is a steampunk. It's only powered by steam. Also, steampunk is one of the fewest subgenders that has something to do with clothes. Actually, there is a lot of clothes that are based with those engines, that Victorian style with large hats, some sunglasses with some wires on it, so they can give it that look that's old, but it's actually really modern. For example, there's cars moved with steam or other things. Later on, we move to dieselpunk. Dieselpunk, I say that they have the same thing as steampunk, but they move obviously with diesel. This was more common to see, for example, flying trains, flying boats for war. For example, I don't know, the ships from World War II were commonly used, and then they use it as flying machines. The next subgender combines two things that are important by themselves, but together are far more important. For example, no, technology and a dystopian world. This forms cyberpunk. For example, cyberpunk basically is based on the idea in which human life and technology combine each other to form new things. For example, the movie of Scarlett Johansson, Ghost in the Shell, is one of the best examples of how a world in of cyberpunk world will work. For example, they have nurses that can literally take off their eyes to reveal they can connect cables to their brain so they can download and upload information. They have people that can make invisible. They have full bodies that are only synthetic bodies. Then we move to the next gender. It's an Ukraine. An Ukraine, it's for example, it's a timeline of our time, but with something changed. For example, the movie Inglorious Bastards, it's an Ukraine. Why? Because Quentin Tarantino, the director, imagined a world that in which Nazis were assassinated by a group of American people. Another world is another example of this kind of world. It's the series the Man on the High Castle. Why? Because in that world, people of United States surrender to Japanese and German and Nazis. So what happened? They divided basically United States in two: the German side, Japanese side, and the neutral in the middle. But also there we can see something. We can imagine things. For example, imagine that Hitler doesn't want the war, which is basically most of the Ukrainians, or for example that Nazis may use more technology than they used in the Second World War, so they could win. Then now we move to space operas. Basically, even though the name says operas, it has nothing to do with music or with plays. Space opera are stories settled in space or with space travels, but they have the particularity to travel long distance in a short time, so they can move to the story. Also, for example, the novel Hyperion of Dan Simmons is the best example. Why? Because they say they travel from planet to planet that are years of distance, or maybe they sleep for a long time just to don't get old, and the story could continue. Also, this particular subgender it's characterized because it involves all the universe. It means that the universe is completely full of humans, so they have to travel fast so the story could keep moving and they don't die in the process of the story. The next subgender it's called solar punk, but it has other names. Basically, in this world, people, the human civilization was is so advanced that they involve nature in technology. So we can see worlds, for example, buildings with green parts in it, worlds that are basically forests, or for example, houses that are in the forest. Some people try to call it I think they call it eco punk, but most people try to call it solar punk because most of energy comes from the sun, our nearest star, and now we have scrap punk. In this world, everything gets screwed. They say that people that instead of people trying to do more things, is that the world is destroyed by a war, by our own star or something like that, or a virus. So what people do is to build things from scrap, building their own houses, their own buildings, their own ships, only from scrap, using things from the past that they don't remember, but they know how they were used. At last but not least, we have military science fiction. Basically, they say that in this let's say universe, all the science and all the knowledge from human is used for the war. The best example of this is the movie Starship Troopers, which basically tells the story of a boy who grows to be a soldier and studies all his life just to be a soldier, to fight these insects that try to kill the human race in other planets. Obviously, as I said, all the technology is used on war. Also, there's something called retrofuturism. What does this do? Imagine the technology, the, let's say, aesthetic of the years 1940s and 1950s, but with something more modern. For example, having atomic cars with the design of a Ford 1966. Let's just say the best example of this particular gender, it's the subgender, it's the games of Fallout, especially Fallout 4. Why? At the beginning of all the game, we saw that there's a car with the design of a 1950s car, but it said that it had its own power comes from a mini nuclear generator. Also, for example, they have these kind of robots that speak and know how to pronounce know how, their names. Basically, they say, imagine if we have the. Also, there's something called space western. Let's imagine the movie of of the movie of cowboys, but with a, let's say, space theme. For example, the anime Cowboy Bebop is the best example because why? They are like policemen, but they also have some time travel things. Or for example, just imagine we have space cowboys that are basically cowboys in space, traveling from planet to planet just to get back things. But this is, let's say, one of the weakest subgenres of science fiction. But people are trying to always innovate and add some things so that they don't get lost in old memory. The techno thriller combines two things: science fiction and noir cinema. For noir cinema, is well known for having genres like police things, or having detectives as their protagonists. The best example of this is a movie of Blade Runner. Why? Because it's in a futuristic world in which androids live, and even androids can imitate human beings, as almost as if they were real human beings. Obviously, they have certain defects, but there are, as I say, it's noir because it's a cop that tries to look for these replicants that are always trying to as the name say, replicate human actions. That's why it's called space thriller, because combines science fiction and the noir cinema.